Why is everybody so obsessed with hating and marketing? You are a criminal? Watch it right now. I do not joke about Ghibli. This is Frank. Frank has a brain. Frank is not much more than a brain. I argue I'm not much more than a brain either. Crazy good. It's one of those things where you're like, should I be watching this? Hello and welcome back to Your Personal Music Therapy, where I pair pop culture moments with psychology insights. My name is Hannah. I'm a speech therapist by day, and I write on Medium, where I basically cover everything between music and psychology as a woman living abroad. Today, we are going to be talking about potentially my all-time favorite topic, which is Jungian psychology. I just finished learning about the name psychology of different artists. I'm going to be introducing a few people, one of which is up here. As always, the original article that I'm going to be discussing today is going to be linked down below, including all of the music and all of the pictures that you might want to look at. The title of today's episode is Jungian Psychology in Music: Why Names Matter. Between the darkness of rap, Taylor Swift's shiny eras, and Lady Gaga's She Heroes complex, the question is, do they have artist names or are they just artists with names? And why that is important, we're going to get to. Let's get started. Oh, and by the way, don't be distracted by the naked child on the back of my computer. This is a sunny angel. I promise you, this is not an evil endeavor. It's just a very cute plastic creature that I love to look at when I'm editing, because editing takes hours, and I love to have a little baby looking at me from the side of my laptop. Kind of cute. Take good care of your name, says Zeniba to Chihiro as she sends her to slay her sister. In the world of Spirited Away, names are the only ticket out of the spirit's realm, tucked away across a river in the Japanese countryside. Her name is Chihiro's only way to return home and release her greedy parents from the spell that turned them into pigs. If you haven't watched Spirited Away, you are a criminal. Watch it right now. I do not joke about Ghibli. If you haven't seen a Studio Ghibli movie, you just haven't seen most of what this world has to offer. I'm actually sorry for you, because that's how good Spirited Away is. Go watch it right now. What a fantastical story. So meaningful and symbolic because no one truly forgets their name. That is a mere fairy tale, it seems. It is, however, quite plausible for us to forget who we are. Names are a manifestation of personality in letters and ink. And in our brains, they hold far more importance than just being a word. As a speech therapist and expat, I know the power of names very well, especially since my own name is a puzzle for me. So let me take you on a ride into the Jungian psychology behind my favorite artists' names, because they are far more interesting than a simple marketing scheme. This is, by the way, something that really messes with me. I hate how everybody today is just about marketing. I don't care about the branding of these people. I really don't, because they're artists. Of course, they're selling things, but they have something to say. Like, why do we have to keep going back to marketing? I hate it. I'm done with it. I understand that it's important, but please, for the love of God, can we stop talking about only the marketing of artists? It feels like online, there's two things to do with artists. Critique them, like literally fucking hate them, or analyze their marketing, and you're going to get a couple people who really want to learn their own marketing. But that's it. Like, who's talking about the art of it? Where has the art in audible art gone? Why is everybody so obsessed with hating and marketing? I've seen so many artist interviews recently where the artists were so upset and they were like, nobody cares about the art of it. Like, everybody's about the branding and marketing. I'm like, yes, for some fucked up reason, they are. So that's why I'm here discussing the psychology, because I think that's so much more interesting and so much more important than talking about how they created their color scheme for the millionth time. Chapter 1, my struggle with my own name. Ironically, I share much of Chihiro's journey. When I moved to Taiwan 3 years ago, I got a new name, and it was given to me by my university. Truthfully, I felt reborn with a new name, which was partially due to the fact that I, like an infant, couldn't even write my own name anymore. It was an experience I didn't expect to hold so much weight in my life. I've had 3 names in my life so far. My mother's maiden name, though it was only for a very short time. Then my father's family name, which is the thing that most of us have, I guess. And finally, I got this name, Gao, in an unfamiliar language that I yet again didn't choose myself. In a way, it appears that one of the biggest plights of the female lived experience is something that Jung actually didn't consider. Women are most frequently given names, and traditionally, we are also the ones who are forced to change them. Oh, the irony of being a woman. Only a few months ago, when I moved to Korea, did I dare to give myself my own name for the first time. I gave myself the name Hannah Jung. Why did I choose Jung or Jung? because I needed a Korean family name that would help me fit in, yet it needed to be meaningful and it needed to be useful for my new documents that I had. So I wanted to choose my own name for the first time in a meaningful way. I'm well aware now, not only as a feminist, of the importance that a name can hold. Also psychologically, and in terms of speech, it makes a big difference what you call yourself. And I always strive to learn cultures by trying to integrate the best that I can. Jung was the perfect name for me because while it's meaningful in Korean, it also traces back to my favorite psychologist in German, which is my mother tongue. And this psychologist is Carl Jung, the man who mapped the subconscious. With this new name, I'm entering a new era of myself, much like Taylor Swift, and I cannot help but find that she, among other artists, is a true genius in how she applies personality. But let me begin my guided tour through the subconscious of names, where all things start, in the dark. Why am I being so dramatic about this? Chapter 2, Shadow Work and Eminem. Given the spike in nature, heavy lyrical critique, and heavy beats, it is no surprise that rap artists love to play with the idea of their alter ego through names. They often tend to emphasize their shadow of their personality, as Jung would call it, which is sometimes broken down to being the evil part inside us. But just the evil part is far too simple. The shadow in our personality really is the part we hide away, not because it's generally bad, but oftentimes simply because it makes us uncomfortable. It is either not aligned with the norm culture surrounding us, which makes it uncomfortable in social settings, or it runs contrary to the narrative that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and this can be even more uncomfortable. As such, the shadow of our personality has an important function. It is a barometer for alignment on one's own life path, and following it means to find those parts of yourself that you and your surroundings are usually uncomfortable with. The shadow can sometimes rear its ugly head when we've strayed too far from living a life that is healthy for us in search of being more comfortable. One person who found gold in their shadow is Eminem, and I'm talking literal gold and lots of money. What made him really famous is his shadow personality, Slim Shady. As Slim Shady, Eminem likely didn't rap any better than he did as Eminem before. But by letting the dark in, he became more open and aggressive in a way that caught attention. Showing other parts of your personality often evokes strong reactions because it's vulnerable and thus a very shocking thing to do, so it attracts attention. Slim Shady is arguably what made Eminem famous, as he became more confessional than ever, stopped caring about the rules, and became more and more aggressive in his rapping. This was good for the arts, but it did eventually touch on his personal life when Slim Shady started showing up in his real life, leading to several cases of him breaking the law. And it took him a long time to come back from this low point. This is the danger for artists who let their shadow roam publicly. At some point, the ego, the conscious part of our psyche, is overpowered by this shadow, leading to a role confusion of who really is in the driver's seat, the conscious ego or the subconscious shadow that the singers are now putting into their lyrics. Eminem let his shadow personality, Slim Shady, enter from the subconscious into the conscious until it started to eat up his ego. But shadow work, as dangerous as it might be, can also be done safely, and a good example of that is the rapper Agust D. Let's get into chapter 3. The amygdala and Agust D. Agust D is the shadow persona of Suga, the rapper from BTS, whose real name is actually Min Yoongi. So the man has 3 names, which is why I feel like I can also have more names. Min Yoongi's psychological world building is far more advanced than the invention of Slim Shady, though he certainly took inspiration from both Eminem and Carl Jung. He's actually an avid reader of psychology books. Min Yoongi is known as one of the more introverted, dark characters in BTS, and millions of fans followed his healing process through his persona, Agust D. Literally, Agust D is the inversion of his stage name, Suga, adding the letters DT at the end, which is an acronym for his hometown, Daegu, often labeled D-Town in the rap underground scene in which he grew up. The letter joke is a first artifact of how seriously Min Yoongi takes his personas. In his solo project as Agust D, Min Yoongi is darker and more depressive and more confessional than in his BTS appearances. As a producer who's very fond of his Korean heritage, songs like Haegum play with the same mirrors in meaning and words as his name suggests. The word Haegum refers simultaneously to either a traditional Korean instrument or, written in traditional Chinese characters, it translates directly to lifting a ban or unblocking something that was previously forbidden. Thus, he cleverly nudges to the past with this instrument as he calls for liberation and freedom of expression in the future. But my favorite Agust D psychology nugget is actually the song Amygdala, which is named after an almond-shaped brain area in the limbic system that is connected to the control of emotions. This is highly simplified. The brain is more complicated. At the same time, an amygdala shock is quite literally the opposite of emotional control. It is caused by an extreme emotional trigger that leads to the amygdala bypassing the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with reasoning. An amygdala shock thus floods your body with hormones and emotions that are irrational, and this is often part of a trauma response. Now let me ask Frank for help. This is Frank. Frank has a brain. Frank is not much more than a brain. I argue I'm not much more than a brain either. And I'm going to show you Frank's amygdala. It's not big. Oh no. Frank just lost his cerebellum. Half of his cerebellum. Sorry, Frank. Okay, I'm gonna put Frank back together after I'm done with this. I wanted to remove Frank's prefrontal cortex, but it seems like Frank didn't want that. So I'm just now realizing that an improvement I can make to the studio is putting the camera closer so that Frank may not lose his brain anymore. Guess you lost your shit. He looks a little bit unhinged. He looks fine, but actually he's kind of empty. Such a man. We're gonna put him back here. Okay. Okay, Frank. Oh my god, Frank. Okay, forget it. Frank and me are gonna have a serious discussion after this shoot. Freaks out about me trying to pull out his prefrontal cortex. I mean, back to Min Yoongi. He's a safe man. He's a better man than Frank. In the song Amygdala, Min Yoongi writes down his most traumatic experiences like his mother's heart surgery, his motorcycle accident, and his father's liver cancer, as he curses his amygdala for setting him into shock mode every time. He literally sings, and I'm quoting here, "My amygdala, please save me, please let me out," both calling for help and fighting himself. And this is precisely where Agust D takes the idea of Slim Shady a step further. Not only does he allow his shadow to surface from the subconscious into his art, into his music, but he uses the necessary vocabulary to keep holding the reins, which is something that Eminem couldn't do. Agust D is allowed to curse and swear and protest openly, and he bleeds onto the lines of his lyrics in a way that Suga of BTS can't. But he doesn't externalize the problems into his real life. In other words, he doesn't blame others for his pain in a hurtful way, but he uses art as a canvas to express things he can't keep hidden any longer. This prevents him from eventually turning into a criminal through his shadow, like Eminem did. Actually, Suga has spoken about using Agust D as a healing journey quite openly. Agust D still exists on Spotify for all those fans who need him and who need his sound to give some words to their own pain. But Suga, or Min Yoongi I should say, has announced that he is retiring his shadow personality Agust D for now. And this was actually a beautiful signal to BTS ARMY, as it was a tangible artifact that Min Yoongi, the man behind both Suga and Agust D, was healing. All in all, Min Yoongi is a true musical artist who wields public personas expertly by giving the public access to other parts of himself intermittently. But there is one woman who's been playing personas like a freaking card game, and her name is Lady Gaga. Next chapter, Lady Gaga and sticky masks. Jung describes the persona as part of the conscious human personality. It is also often referred to as the masks we wear in society, or roles that we take on in different settings. As such, personas are a favorite tool of artists who reflect their inner workings onto their audience in sometimes eccentric ways. And at times, Lady Gaga is exactly the eccentric mayhem that she has titled her name after. She's known to be an activist for the LGBTQ+ movement, but she will always be burned into my visual cortex as the alien from Born This Way, the music video, or as the woman who's wearing a meat dress on the red carpet. If you want to check out the video for Born This Way, the video is linked in the article down below. This is one of the craziest videos of music history. I argue Lady Gaga's Born This Way is an insane piece of art, but also an insane piece of feminism, an insane piece of music. The intro of this music video is basically an alien's birth. That's all I'm gonna say. Crazy. But crazy good. It's one of those things where you're like, should I be watching this? Probably I shouldn't, but it feels like maybe this is meaningful, which is exactly, I think, the gray area that art should be in. After her recent success with her new album, Mayhem, she did an interview with the New York Times in which she openly admitted to having lost herself in the craft of impersonation. As she strove to turn from an alien to a country singer in A Star Is Born and an icon at the Paris Olympics, and also she was a poker-faced superstar at some point, she used the red carpet as her expressive canvas and herself as the brush that continued to be worn out. This is a story that, in many ways, parallels Eminem's experience. She says that now she sees herself more as an artist again who crafts sounds with her partner, who is also a producer of her new album. She's lost herself in her self-expression previously until she eventually forgot who she really was. And instead of the subconscious shadow becoming too large, her conscious mask or persona got a bit too sticky and she couldn't get it off anymore. I guess the demons she invented to be expressive that earned her praise eventually developed a taste for oxygen. Which leads me to one sad constant narrative. It is often said that chaos, insanity, and mayhem, if you will, breed creativity in a way that order just can't. Lady Gaga in her interview argues against this narrative because she says her art in Devastation wasn't actually better than what she made in a healthy state. And I agree. All humans need whole and healthy brains to create the best art, be it music or visuals. The kernel of truth in this chaos theory for arts is that chaos feeds creativity. And crazy is a word that we use to describe things that are novel. Thus, a creative act, like music, runs on just enough chaos to be sorted by a crazy artist, who actually isn't a person dealing with something perfectly crazy, but rather they're just a normal person dealing with something normal who's a little bit more brave. All they're doing is a very perfectly normal thing in a very novel way, which is they're going through their own psychology. Now let's talk about the next chapter, Taylor Swift, crafting personas and personality art. In this process of sorting chaos into clarity, the best crazy person there is to understand the beauty of personas in music must be Taylor Swift. She and her eras are not just the perfect expression of variable personas and masks that she puts on for each album, she even managed to bring this term, eras, into the public discourse. Now, Gen Z constantly talks about being in XY era, which is really just a way to state your current state, your role, or your obsession. I think if Carl Jung heard about Taylor Swift's eras, he would call them the individuation process. This is the psychological process of maturation that all of us are on until our puzzle of unconscious and conscious parts is mostly overlapping. Taylor is a special example of dealing with personas, as she's one of the few artists who took ownership of even her older eras later on, allowing her to reflect on her past selves in a way that most artists cannot. Of course, what I'm referring to here is the Taylor's versions or re-recordings of her old albums, before she could buy back the masters of those albums. A specifically visual reclamation of these versions of Taylor happens in the last shot of her music video for Look What You Made Me Do on her Reputation album. Reputation is one of those albums that gets a bit of a bad rap from Swifties sometimes, not always, sometimes, but I'm a Reputation girly. I really like Reputation. I like The Life of a Showgirl, and I like Reputation, and I like 1989. Those are my top three. Reputation could be called Taylor's shadow work after she faced a lot of public backlash and turned into a mummy or snake lady for this album, alongside other horrifying images that were so contrary to her earlier country girl days. In these last seconds of the music video for Look What You Made Me Do from 8 years ago, and there have been quite a few new eras to be added in the meantime, all her personas are lined up and they're engaging in a discussion. This showcases perfectly how aware Taylor is of all the versions of herself that are out there. And yet she has the grace and humor for all of those past versions of herself, not to get absorbed by any of them and not to curse any of them either. She can literally have them have a conversation with each other. She acknowledges that they are all part of who she is, which perpetuates an idea that many of us are challenged by. Humans are ever changing and multifaceted, as much as we would like to stick things into neat little boxes. Now for the final chapter, where we're going to be comparing Miley Cyrus and Chappell Rowan, asking the question, do they have artist names or are they just artists with names? In returning to the premise of this article, The Psychology of Names, there is a recent star on the Walk of Fame that is known to be the best of both worlds while also having seen the worst of either world, and that is Miley Cyrus. Staring at me from behind my left shoulder. Recently, Hannah Montana, the old Disney Channel public persona of Miley Cyrus that transported Miley Cyrus right from my TV screen into my heart, celebrated her 20th anniversary, which reminded me that I'm old now. It is safe to say that Miley went through ebbs and flows with the character of Hannah Montana. Maybe because it was less of an era, like Taylor, and she couldn't revisit it. It was more like a separate character that she was playing, and it wasn't malleable. It was completely separate from Miley, and especially, most importantly, it was superimposed upon her as a very young girl. It wasn't something she chose. Taylor can choose her eras and craft and mold them. Miley Cyrus was given Hannah Montana. In the early 2010s, Miley fought the image of Hannah Montana, first through simple defiance, then through revenge, and eventually through causing public uproar. Her song, Can't Be Tamed, was a first nudge at showing the public who was really beyond this blonde wig, as she presented herself as a dark bird inside a cage at the museum under the name Avis Cyrus. Can't Be Tamed was the first CD I ever owned. Fun fact. One of my favorite songs on that album is Liberty Walk. Beautiful song that gets zero appreciation, but it's very nice. Again, this is a play at the idea of the shadow. And this time it's performed by an artist who felt her true personality to be merely the dark shadow of a wig that she wore publicly, which covered Miley, and she was only called Hannah. She sings, and now I'm quoting, "I'm not a mistake, I'm not a fake, it's set in my DNA. Don't change me, I can't be tamed." That's the lyrics of I Can't Be Tamed. And she dances a choreography somewhere between Lady Gaga's Poker Face and Michael Jackson's thriller. But with her album bangers, and especially with Wrecking Ball, the image of life in two worlds as Hannah Montana shattered. And the public didn't take that lightly on her. In recent interviews, she tells that story very vulnerably. How she almost lost it all, and how people tried to ban her music, wrote complaint letters, and acted as if Miley showing herself beneath the wig was an insult to them personally. It's almost like the inversion of the Slim Shady and Eminem story, because the mask of Hannah Montana was so insanely out of touch with who Miley herself was that her ego, the real personality, the conscious she was, became the shadow, at least publicly. And in her struggle to prove who she really was, the public rejected her. But there is hope, because the next generation seems a little more cautious of the power of names. On the 20th anniversary special for Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus appeared healed, and she sat down with Chappell Rowan for a short talk. Chappell thanked Miley for showing her how to live with a persona as a female artist, and how to craft a personality on stage, and what the struggle between personal and public names can look like. Chappell Rowan's own rise to fame is marked by her starting to perform as this drag performance on stage, which gave her the visual and audible audacity and individualism she needed to be recognizable. Her real life name, Kaylee Rose Armstertz, would probably have never carried her to the fame and heights that she's in right now. This is the main hinge that the psychology of names operates on. A name for an artist is a great way to separate your roles from one another, the shadow from the ego, and the persona from the real person. It is similar to how we like to keep work and life separate, and embody different roles in different social settings. But there's always the risk that a new persona overpowers the real ego, or that we start cosplaying our personality rather than living more truly inside our own minds. Chappell Rowan's fans, for instance, draw a very clear line between Chappell and Kaylee, and she herself also makes this very, very clear in interviews. She refers to Chappell as her stage persona, her drag identity, and she frequently labels Chappell as a project. In a way, stepping into Chappell for her is like taking a seat in the office chair at work, which is actually a very healthy psychological dynamic. And I guess their part of her is thanking Miley Cyrus for having had so many issues around her persona that she now has the chance to be more healthy about it. It is important to be the agent of one's own names, one's own labels, as I discussed in this previous podcast episode, or one's personalities. And maybe Chappell can be the light at the end of the tunnel, where even the public can no longer ignore that their artists have more than one side. And thus, they also have more than one name. Thanks for granting me access to your ears on the Mugcast. You can read more of my writing over on Medium at Hannah's Café, or under the publication Music for Thought, where I'm also an editor. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, share it with a fellow coffee lover, and let me know in the comments which topic I should be tackling next. If you're interested in moving abroad yourself, or just chasing your dreams, which sometimes can be a little bit of a spicy thing to do as a woman, I've written a book about my journey. It's called Facing Away. You can find the link down below. I hope you had a nice cappuccino with this episode, and I send a warm hug from my mug to yours. I hope to see you soon somewhere else on Hannah's Café. Bye bye!